I'm imagining the ways that restaurants could quickly reconfigure to become a different kind of business without spending a lot of money, something that would immediately boost their income, and maybe give them a chance. And just here's some brainstorming ideas. One idea is to rent tables in the restaurant for work-at-home people who just want to go someplace that's not their own house. Now, if you work at home every day, you already know where I'm going with this, right? If you work at home and you got kids there and you got a spouse there, grandparents, you got dogs running around, you got people delivering stuff, it's kind of hard to get any work done in your own house sometimes. So I know a lot of people who would be willing to rent a table in a restaurant, let's say during the afternoon hours, let's say 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And let's say the morning from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And you could just rent a table. Now you could stay there and get some food to go, or eat your lunch there also, or you could eat your lunch and then just stay and rent the table for a few hours. And you just bring your laptop and you just do your work, but you don't make any phone calls. So that's one model. It basically combines what Starbucks already does successfully, which is essentially they rent you tables, but they don't directly charge it. They sort of embarrass you to buy Starbucks products, and if you buy their products, well, then you sort of have, indirectly, you rented a table that you can sit at and use your laptop. The president's already talking about making meals tax deductible for businesses. I think that'd be a big change and great. Here's another change. Since a lot of us are getting hooked on takeout and delivery, but the problem with takeout and delivery is the same, analogous to the problem of online school. I complain about online education because all they did is take a camera and point it at somebody who knows how to teach, and that's not even close to where online education could be if you had the right team and you did it right. Likewise, with restaurants, what restaurants did for takeout, and especially during the crisis, is they took the items that are on their menu at the prices that they're listed on the menu, added on top of it, the delivery fee, which is usually the fee that the delivery company does. And then basically they just took the same business model and said, well, how about if we bring it to your house? Now that's okay. It meets a lot of needs, and if you have a high income, it's a good alternative. But if restaurants are trying to succeed, like in this new environment, one way they might go is to become a meal replacement business, maybe in addition to the high-end stuff. But you could imagine them changing their business into almost an exclusively meal replacement business, in which they maybe are not doing the high-end steaks, but every night they have 3 or 4 choices that a family of 4 would want to eat. And then they price it so that it doesn't, it's not outrageous. So a lot of it has to do with the pricing. So I think they could make a meal replacement model, which they do not have now. Right now it's a restaurant model that they deliver to your house, which is not the best of both worlds. That could be redesigned. I also imagine that you could turn regular restaurants into drive-throughs or drive-ups, or like the old days where you went to a diner in your car and the server rolled up on roller skates to the door of your car. So there's a business in my town that sells ice cream. It's called the Dairy, and it's been there forever, and it's an institution in my town, and it's a drive-up. So basically you get in line in your car, and usually teenagers come out and they ask you what you want, in line, so that by the time you get up to the front of the line, they're almost ready and they just hand it to you and you pay. So it's very efficient, but here's what's interesting. The business was not really designed as a drive-through business. I think it just sort of evolved that way, because and then they started changing the street. So there was so much business for this one ice cream place that the town started putting cones out and sort of making it easier for a long line to form. And so I could easily imagine that some restaurants would transform their parking lot into the restaurant. So you could drive up in your car, order from your car. Maybe there's, I don't know, a movie or something playing in the parking lot, and you got people on roller skates or not bringing your food up, but they're trying to keep a distance, right? Or maybe they don't even bring the food up. Maybe they just, leave it on the table with a number and you go and get it yourself. Whatever's the least contact. I also think that maybe movies will just go out of business, because I'm not sure that going to the movies even makes sense anymore. In my opinion, going to the movies was sort of the default plan if you didn't have anything fun to do. I mean, in the old days, going to the movies was actually an event that you liked doing. But today, with our attention spans being so small and movies being so bad, and the alternatives on our phone, from Twitter to YouTube, being so good, that actually going to a movie and sitting there in suboptimal conditions, it's just not as good. And I feel like the pandemic might just end movies as a business and just move it to your house and your phone. So people think, hey, how do we get our restaurants back to the way they were? And I say, if the restaurant model has just blown up, you should not be asking this question. You should not be asking how to get restaurants back to the way they were, because you rarely get a chance to blow everything up and just rethink it from the scratch. And so I think you should be asking, how could we make restaurants better than they ever were? Because you should at least ask the question. I mean, it might turn out that the answer is you can't do it. But if the only question you're asking is how do we get back to the way we were, that's sort of a loser mindset. Because when do you get to have stuff blown up like this? I mean, it's all bad news, but on the other hand, you kind of get to start from scratch and really get creative and be flexible. Maybe there's some local ordinances that can be adjusted a little bit that normally wouldn't be possible. So here's some things I want to suggest in that realm. Suppose DoorDash or any of the apps that let you order food to be picked up at restaurants, suppose it added an option for dining in. And instead of where you put in your address of your house, you put in your table number. So if you're ordering from a certain restaurant, you put in the table number, that means you're there. And so there's no server talking to you to get your order. You just order it by app when you're in the restaurant, and then it comes over and it's sat on a side table, so that nobody puts it in front of each of you. There's nobody taking dishes away. They just put a side table there, and you help yourself so that you're not interacting. Now, of course, in the long run, especially a high-end restaurant, you want the full table service, but at the moment, you might have to get flexible. I also thought that you could add a little 10 card, a sign that's on the table that has the phone numbers to text if you want to send a message to the kitchen. It's not the chef who answers the phone, but if you want to send a message to the kitchen or the front office or the server or something, you can just text it. And there would be somebody whose job it is just to take the text and tell whoever it is that needs to be told. So that's one way you could avoid human contact. You might also want to relax local zoning laws. So you could expand sidewalks out during warm weather and just maybe close the streets, for a while, for months. Just close any streets that have a lot of restaurants on them, because usually there's not much parking on the street anyway. You don't lose that much. And usually there's an easier way to get around than the street that has all the restaurants. So just close it. Let the restaurants expand into the street, so you got lots of space around tables, and maybe even allow dogs. In my town, you can't bring your dog to a restaurant, even if you're eating outside. But what if you could? At least temporarily. Would you like to bring your dog out to dinner and you have him on the leash, of course? A lot of people would like that. At least in my town, that would be a big thing. And you could also imagine that using the honor system, because you could never enforce this, you would ask people to come in only at least in the beginning, with the people that they're isolating with. So if you're isolating with your family, you can bring your family and sit at a table at a restaurant. But you don't want to mix people who had been separately isolating just because they went to a restaurant. Later you can do that. And maybe if it's a business meeting and you just have to have people cross-pollinating, you have some special places, away from other people, something like that. But the larger idea is just to rethink these things from scratch, and rather than say, how do we get back to where we were, think about how to make it better. All right.